Well, hi everyone. I'm Brenda Morrison. I'm a partner here with Balancing Act, and thanks for taking the time to spend a little while with us today to get acquainted with our tool, the Balancing Act Budget Simulation. And with us today, you met Chris, I think, but we've got three of our best people here to provide support for you today too. During this time, if you have questions that need to be answered. And so I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves. Chris, do you want to start? Oh, except he's muted. Are you muted?
Hi,
okay.
This is Chris Adams. I'm also a partner and co-founder along with Brenda of Balancing Act. And it's a pleasure to have everybody here. I spent about a decade of my life living in California, and it's a lovely place, and we're glad to be in touch with you all.
And Chris will be joining us a little later to talk a little bit more about meeting mode. And Charlie?
Well, thank you, Brenda. It's really an honor to be here with the Balancing Act team today. My name is Charlie Francis. I'm a retired city finance director. The last city I worked at was Sausalito, California. I've been in this business 45 years, over 20 of those years as a chief financial officer for cities. And, I'm here to talk about my experience with budgeting, and this remote working crisis that we're in right now. I know everyone's scared. This is a new territory for everyone. And as we think about it, we have a wonderful opportunity with this tool to build trust with our citizens and to use it also for internal decision making. So thank you, Brenda.
Sure, and Charlie will be talking to us a little later, as will Chris, and Peter Dieterich, our sales director, is also on. Or he was on.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, you could say hi.
I'm Peter Dietrich, Director of Sales. So I'm happy to help you with any questions, any follow-ups, any questions you might have getting started. I'm MPA graduate, and I spent a lot of years working in government, so hopefully I can be able to provide some assistance as well. And thanks so much for joining us.
Great, thanks guys. We'll get back to you later, and we're just going to go ahead and get started here. This is who's joining today. I don't know if they're in person or if they are, if some of you are in person. I see Craig just joined. Hi, Craig.
Hi.
And Tyler's here. I hope we've got his audio. Tyler, are you there? And Sheila's here, right?
Sheila's here.
So we're doing this over Zoom and not over GoToMeeting to allow you to ask more questions as they come up. And so although we kept the group small in number, we limited the number of people today so that you can ask questions. And although I know on Zoom it's, you don't have the hand raising thing that you do on GoToWebinar or GoToMeeting, but if you do have a question, just go ahead and interrupt. And we'll go ahead and see if we can either answer it then or answer it later. And it's one of those things that if you have a question, probably somebody else does too. So don't be afraid. And so normally we start this presentation, our onboarding, which is what you've all signed up with. You've all signed up for an account, hopefully at this point. And we generally start with our onboarding with this slide telling you can use the budget simulation all year round. When a city or county manager is developing a budget, you can use it to get feedback from residents. You can use it internally, but the situation has so dramatically changed in the last month that we think that now is the best time to use this budget simulation. And I just want to mention before we go on just how indebted I think all of us are to public servants. And we know that the budget folks, the finance folks, you are the unsung heroes. You're worried about what's going to happen, the services that are going to be provided to residents. And we decided to offer this tool for you free for the next few months in order to hopefully make your lives easier, to be able to have a conversation about budgets remotely while you can't be meeting in person, and be able to convey the tough trade-offs that are before us in all over the country. So I just pulled a couple of these from California papers. It's the same here in Colorado, by the way. We're in Denver. Charlie's in Minnesota, but I think the headlines are all the same. So we're gonna just jump in here today. We're hoping that by the end of today that you can feel really comfortable creating your simulation, that you can get off the phone, and if you want to, just start creating it, and you'll know what to do. And so we're gonna just go over the control panel, how to choose your categories, how to enter your data, adding context, and using meeting mode so that you can really get started if you wanted to tomorrow. If you had a meeting tomorrow, or you have council or county commissioners, or you want to use this, you can use it very quickly. That's what this version is designed to do. So I'm going to show you, I'm not even sure how many of you have seen a final version of Balancing Act that's finished. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and create a simulation right now. This deck I will send you afterwards, and we'll go back to the deck a little later. But most of this, what's in the deck, is designed, to be honest, to jog your memory if you forget when you're doing something, or if you need to show it to some colleagues or city council about what balancing is all about. So I'll send you the deck afterwards, no worries, but we're gonna leave the deck for a little while, and I'm gonna go ahead and just show you a couple simulations, and then we're gonna go ahead and create one. So here we go. I wanted to show you, this is Corona, California's launch page. And they've been a client of ours for a number of years. They've done a very nice job. And as you can see, this is a resident-facing launch page. They have it in English and in Spanish. And just so you know, Balancing Act is available in Spanish to you as well. But there's a link right from the, looks like the finance page, along with all the other finance information anybody has. And I'm just going to click to go to their site, and you see it comes up. And your site will have this too. It just has a little welcome message, and we're going to get started. And as you see, this is how Corona, California has designed their site. All sites have a dynamic bar at the top that tells you what's going on. I'm not sure Corona, California would have a surplus this year, but we'll see what's happening. And there are, and now you can see their budget categories. So Balancing Act is designed that there's several layers, 5 layers of categories. So there, of data, there's your category. So up here is administrative services. And if I click administrative services, they have 3 subcategories that they've decided to use. So they have human resources, safety and training, finance and administration. And,
this is Charlie. I'm seeing your slide deck still is our.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Wish someone else had said that. Okay, how about this?
Better.
Thank you. Next time that happens, please tell me. All right, so we're looking at Corona, California's. I'm just gonna back their simulation right now. So if you aren't familiar with what a finished simulation looks like, this is what it looks like. It's there's your category and your subcategories. And you can have as many subcategories as you'd like. However, we're going to talk a little bit about this. It really depends on who is this simulation is designed for. This is a public-facing simulation. This was designed for residents. So they might have chosen certain subcategories that they thought the residents would be more interested in that. But that's something to keep in mind. As you can see, so these are their budget categories. These are their subcategories. As I scroll down, it's the same on the revenue side as well. On the revenue side, they have, some of them don't have subcategories, but let's see. Don't seem to have as many subcategories over on the revenue side, but you can if you want. And so as you can see, back to if I choose community development, if I'm interested in knowing more about building inspection, I can choose the I. What's building inspection? This is the third level of data. It's telling me what this department does. And I could put, this is about the maximum amount of information that you can put there. We do have something called more details. They didn't use that right here, that you could, I'll show you in addition to this. So this is a finished simulation. This is one way of doing it. It's pretty basic. I'm going to show you another finished simulation that will also give you a different feel for how another community put it together. This is Virginia Beach, Virginia. And you can see they use priority-based budgeting, like the priorities to grow the local economy. And then they put the 2 budget categories that do that for them, agriculture and economic development, underneath that budget category. If I wanted to learn more about agriculture, that's usually about the amount of information that's good for that I. And so there are a couple different ways to structure this. So they used it, and then this is pretty long, under what's probably just their administrative services department. So now that you've seen a simulation, and of course, if I'm interested, I can, if I feel like the budget and management services ought to get more money, I could increase it, but yeah, then you'd see I'd be in a deficit. So that's what finished budget simulations look like. So now we're going to create one. So all of you have an account. Peter sent you all up with an account, and I think some of you have already either started or created a shell account already. But what you'll see is it's really easy. Can you see my screen in terms of sharing an account?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So all you have to do, it's really simple. It says create simulation. I'm going to create the simulation. Click on that. Today's simulation is going to be California demo. I could do this in English. I'm going to do this in English. If I wanted to do the same one in Spanish, I would just press this button and I could choose the language I choose. Vietnamese, Spanish are the languages, French, Marshallese Islands, that we have currently. But I'm going to start from scratch. And I'm just going to press continue. So you'll see at the top, got my name, I've got the California demo, and now I've got to think about these categories and revenue categories. And I asked Charlie here to help on this because he's been in your spot and I have not. I can only tell you how easy it is to actually do it, and he's going to give you kind of the thought process behind it. But if you're, all you will need to do is you'll need to create a CSV from Excel or from your budgeting program, and you will, here's a download that allows you the template. So if I, if I press this, it gives you the template. I'm going to show you an actual template. So I'm not going to open this one now, but it'll give you a template. And if I actually finish that, I finished my CSV and I'm going to import it. I will just go to revenue. And there it is. It's imported into the back end. And the spending side works the exact same way. I'm going to import that CSV. And what's really great is that Charlie created this demo based on a California city. I don't know if he can tell you which one, but so it should look like something you're familiar with. And that's it. So now it looks really easy on my end because Charlie created the CSVs. But if I'd gone this far and I'd wanted to preview it, I would just press preview and I'd see what I'd gotten. But except not. Ooh, that's interesting. So Charlie, can you talk to them a little? I'm going to pull up your CSV file right now, and you can talk to them a little bit about it. Is that good?
Yep, that's good.
Okay, I'm going to pull up that CSV file.
Actually, maybe if you could stop sharing and I'll share my screen.
Sure. Okay. I stop sharing.
All right, hold on. And share, and now I'll get this. Oh. There we go. So this was the CSV file that I sent Brenda. It has the revenues for Balancing Act and the expenditures for Balancing Act. And how I got that file was by going into the ERP system and actually, let's see, pull this screen up. What I did is an extract from the ERP, and I asked the extract to give us the account number, the account description, fund name, fund number, fund name, department number, department name, division number, division name, object number, object name, and then the 2020 budget. And then from there, you can create categories and subcategories for importing into Balancing Act by just using a simple pivot table. So in the example that I gave Brenda, I made the category, the department, and the subcategory, the actual line item within the department. And then that created this file here, expenditures for Balancing Act, and within their format, because they only really need 3 columns. They need the category, the subcategory, and the amount column. However, if I wanted to talk about the division, so in other words, if I'm I want to start making decisions based on category and subcategory, well then we can have our filter table be the department name and this column being the division name. So we end up with, within the City Council department, all of these divisions and their related budget amounts. And so it's very simple to do an extract from your ERP. You decide whether you want to do category and department division, or if you want to do department line item type of budget, and then you actually then copy those over into separate folders, for one for revenue for Balancing Act, one for expenditures for Balancing Act, and you're ready to go. It's a very simple process. Brenda, I'm going to stop sharing, but I'll pause and wait and see if there's any questions from any of the members of the audience.
This has been a question, this is Brenda, that many of you have asked. So please go ahead and ask away.
Yeah, you can use the chat function in Zoom to ask questions, or just unmute yourself and ask a question. We're a small enough group.
Does anybody have a question? I can't, wait, I guess not.
Hi, this is Celia. First of all, sorry for being late. Lost track of time, and I do have to leave early because I double booked Zoom meetings, so I have a 1:30. But I was wondering, Charlie, if you were going to be sharing those templates that you just showed us, so that we could have a sample to look at when we are doing our exports through Springbrook.
Oh, sure. Well, actually, those exports I just showed you came out of Springbrook.
Oh.
And if you want, we can set up a Zoom meeting just between you and me. And I can walk you through the setting up a query manager just to get it in the format that you need for Balancing Act.
Okay, perfect. That's very kind of you. Thank you. I think I do have your email, so I'll email you separately about that.
Okay, I'll just put it in chat right now. So I use Springbrook and Sausalito and became like a Springbrook super user. So if you ever have any other Springbrook questions, I could probably help you with that as well.
Great, thank you. I think you used to work with my previous coworker, Priya Nixon.
Oh, I did, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've definitely heard your name. So thank you for that offer.
Oh, you're welcome. There's my email. I just put it in the chat box.
All right, you're turning back to me.
Yep.
Hold on. You go back to me.
Celia, while we're waiting for Brenda, are you living in Yountville now?
No, but I live in the next town over. I live in Napa, born and raised. So
Really? Born and raised? Well, good for you. I was
Yeah.
telling Sheila before you came on that Gurgich is one of my favorite wines. And if you look behind me, that fountain there, that my wife painted that. That's the fountain in Yountville, right there at the corner where the, I think there's a hotel there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Okay, I'm having a little bit of a malfunction here with my Zoom, Chris.
So
Okay, what do you need?
Not allowing me to go back to sharing.
you see the little green share button on the bottom of your screen?
No.
Are you using
If I
two
can-
monitors?
What?
Are you using two monitors?
Yes.
So in your taskbar, there'll be a Zoom icon. And if you click on that, it should bring up the picture
Yeah.
of us. And then if you hover down below, the share screen button should appear.
Yeah, I know. I've done this 100 times, but it's not allowing me to do it.
So maybe it could be in a window that's buried someplace.
Here I'm back. I think I'm back. I'm back. Okay.
Hey, it
All
worked.
right. There we are.
All right.
Sorry about that. All right. So yes, Charlie's going to share this with you. It does look like this screen where it is, where it's in this category. The template is in this category, and all you have to do is have your Excel file and save it as a CSV into this. You can also add categories manually. So let's just say that you're in it and you're like, oh no, I want to add a different category, and I've already imported my CSV. You can add categories manually. No problem. You'll just press add category. It'll come up with a new line, and you'll put your dollar amount in. No problem. As you can see, we talked about that that icon, the eye, right there. And it's really, especially if you're doing this for an external audience for residents, it's really, really important to do this. Some people, I think they just get a little lazy. They don't want to put it in there. It gets a little time consuming. It doesn't take a lot of time. You can do it straight from the CSV. You can write these, you can cut and paste straight from what your budget document says. But it's really important if you're doing an external one for the folks out there who aren't as familiar with city services to use the eye. There's also something called more details right here. And that, again, especially if you're doing it for residents, is really important because you can add more detail. So
Brenda, I have a question.
Yes.
So if a first upload just had the first three columns like category, subcategory, and amount, and later on subsequent to that, I wanted to get up and running as quick as possible. And then subsequent to that, I wanted to add the detail and additional detail. Do I just re-upload my CSV file?
No, you would just go in, you would just need to edit your simulation. And so you would just re-edit your simulation to where it said, you'd go to that column that I'm looking at right now where it says sales tax. You would go press on the more info icon, and it would take you to that spot where you could just, the screen right here, where you could just edit your, write that information right there and then. So I would write what that department does, and I could write more details. And what's really great about this more details feature is I can add a picture, I can add a link, I can add a link to a PDF, my budget document. I could add a video even of somebody if I wanted to go crazy. But I can do that totally later. I don't have to do it right away if I'm in a hurry.
Okay, thank you.
I can also, as you can see here, this came from Dane County, Wisconsin. Here was the more information. If I pressed more details, I came up with a nice infographic. But again, this is very important if you're doing this for public facing, but if you're doing it internally, if this is for council, they may know, although they may not know. So you might want to think about that. So that's what you should add in more details. And one question we get is this: if I've uploaded my CSV and I'm previewing my simulation, do I make it active right away? Does it go live? Where does it go? I can just press preview for, if I don't want to make this live, if I don't want it out there, I can just press preview, copy the URL at the top, and send it around. And I'll show you what that means here. But if I want to activate it and make it live, I would press activate. Once a simulation is activated, I will tell you it can't be edited, that particular simulation. However, don't despair because it's really easy to change it. So let's just say I've activated a simulation. I've built it, I've activated, I like it, and then I find a typo. That's something that would happen to me. I don't have to despair or anything like that. All I would do is, there's a screen later, is you can duplicate that simulation. I think I have one up here that shows you that. You can duplicate that simulation. Back in the beginning when you created your simulation, I had a choice of whether to start from scratch or to duplicate the simulation. I could duplicate it. It would give me a list of my simulations that I've created. And all I do is press duplicate it, and I can make my edit to my typo and press activate, no problem. So it takes 3 minutes to do that. Don't worry about it if you make a typo. The other thing, of course, is you can just delete it too. So if you don't like a simulation, you're playing around and you have 5 different versions and you're confusing yourself, press delete. You do want to consider what you name your simulations, especially when you're testing it. Is it test 1, test 2, 2020, 2021? Be thoughtful what you name it, because it can get a little, you can confuse yourself. But the other thing that we wanted to give you guys the opportunity within this free offer is to use it virtually, is to use Balancing Act in a virtual meeting. And so Chris is going to tell you a little bit about that. I'm going to stop sharing and Chris is going to share.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Brenda. The history of our firm is that we started in 1998 doing face-to-face facilitation, and we very much believe in high-quality face-to-face public engagement, and we do policy meetings and things like that. But we realize the budgets are really hard things to talk about, especially with non-budget people, and so that's why we created the simulation. And in 2014, we launched Balancing Act, and we've had a great deal of success with getting feedback and participation and input online. But we also realized that that face-to-face element is still important. And so we created something called meeting mode, which essentially turns the budget simulation into a tool that can be used in real-time face-to-face discussions or real-time distance discussions. So maybe there's a budget meeting or conversation that is taking place online. Just like we're doing now, you can actually use meeting mode for that as well. These are back in the good old days before social distancing. This is a meeting in Kansas City, Missouri, and you've got residents going through the simulation, and they've sprinkled city officials throughout. You know, when you give people these simulations, that they take them very, very seriously. I know some finance directors, budget directors, kind of think, oh gosh, the public really doesn't care that much, and they'll make bad decisions, and they'll just want to pay for the things that they like, and so forth. What we found is what the simulation does is it puts people in your shoes, and they begin to think, very rationally and reasonably in ways that are almost always along the same lines as leadership of the city or the county or the school district. This is just another example where we've got a lot of interest about using it internally, and this is an example of an internal all-hands meeting. And this actually worked great. The biggest complaint about this meeting, after they worked through the simulation, you can see they're working through it at tables, and then the results are being projected on the screen, is that they didn't have enough time. But of course, this is forbidden. And so I'm going to show you how to set up a meeting and give you guidelines on how to do an online setting, just face-to-face, and maybe face-to-face in the future when we can all be together a little bit more. All right, so I'm going to go to my control panel, and you'll see on the left-hand side, you build your simulations here, as Brenda was just showing you, and then you'll have another panel that will be activated for you for meetings, and you can. It's actually very simple to do. Once you've got your simulation, you simply go up here to the upper right-hand corner and you say create a meeting, and then you give it a title, and we're going to say, demo for California Govs. And by the way, I don't know if it's a distinction that means anything to you all or not, but you are the first state that we've actually done a special onboarding for. But we had so many folks that responded to this coronavirus free offer for 3 months that we decided to do one just for you. So you give it a title, and then you choose the meeting that you want to associate it with. It has to be an activated meeting. And so I'm going to go ahead and choose this one, and then we're going to say continue. And then it gives you a very simple screen. It pre-populates the budget, and then if you want to put in location, you can give it a date or whatever, or description. These are all optional. And then I'm not going to, we've got some educational material on what you use entire budget. I don't know what happens if you do that. I'm going to recommend don't worry about that for now, because we're trying to get people up and running as fast as possible. Save it, and then it takes you back to this screen, and then when you open it up, it gives you a few options. And so the facilitator view is the one that shows the inputs, the aggregated input from everybody. But what you'll give out to your meeting participants is this one, whether your meeting participants are staff internally, or they're the public, or the city council, or whoever. So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to put it in a new incognito window, so it'll be a different color. And then just kind of run you through it. It looks almost identical, and it is almost identical to everything that Brenda was just showing you. The only difference is that, and this has a few different types of interactions, but the only difference is that when you increase or decrease something, it still shows up in the same way, and you see the movement up here, and you see the net here. The only difference is that it's got this green box down here for submit category. And so in order for people's input to be calculated in real time, you have to click submit category. So I'm just going to do a couple of things here. I'll go to Parks and Rec, and I'll increase these a little bit, and I'll decrease this a little bit, and I'll submit category, and maybe I'll even drop the taxes a bit. And then I'm going to submit a category and do a little check mark up here that confirms that you've done it. Now I'm going to go back to that previous screen, and we're going to open the facilitator view. And every 30 seconds, it gets refreshed with the input that was just given only to the people who had that meeting mode URL. So it tells me overall I'm in deficit. That's because I cut taxes, which wouldn't have been such a wise thing probably. But then if I open up police department, it tells me that it was decreased. So if you recall, I decreased this by $48,000. And then detention, I also decreased. And then I did a little bit here on parks. I increased maintenance. I decreased overall parks. And then on taxes, I think I cut sales tax a little bit. And so what this would do is it would aggregate the results from all of your different meeting attendees, and then it will show that on the facilitator screen, and the facilitator screen is the one that you can project. So it's a pretty nice tool. You know, I think with a lot of things, it probably does work better face-to-face, but all of us are figuring out how to make do in this age of social distancing, and so that's why we wanted to make this tool available to you all as you try to deal with it yourself. I think we can share these slides with you. If they're not in Brenda's deck, we can send it. We've, you know, same idea, just sort of repeating what I just showed you. Let's see. And I've
Chris,
kind of already chatted about this, but
Chris, can you talk about how to use it with a city council, perhaps, as they're making budget decisions?
yeah, so so I think we've got a couple of towns in the next couple of weeks here that where the finance office is putting together a version of Balancing Act, and everybody's social distance, and they're using meeting mode to show it to council, and council in sort of a work session that's being broadcast that anybody can listen into has the ability to go onto the simulation, to look at an item, to have a little bit of discussion about it, and then each council member can indicate what they would do. Now you can limit the voting or the interaction on the simulation just to council, or you could make it open to the public. We never have tried to suggest that using Balancing Act simulation is your decision tool. That the results are what you're going to do. We've always thought of it as an education tool to get more and more people informed, and then to let people see real-time interactions, and then ultimately to inform that decision-making process that city staff and elected officials will do. So it'll be interesting. I don't have any actual examples to recount. I just know that 3 or 4 people have contacted 3 or 4 cities in the last few weeks to say that they plan on using it with their council probably towards the end of April here. I think everybody chatted about this, so I'm not going to spend any more time. Oh, then the cumulative report can be downloaded from the simulations page, and that's kind of the case with any Balancing Act simulation. Is you can get a full report of all the actions that your users have done simply by going to the download report button on the simulations page. I think that's my last slide. Oh, I've got one more, and we can share this with you too. We've got a little video. If you want to show people, it's a 90-second video that just kind of goes through that little presentation I gave you about be sure to hit the submit button, et cetera, and that, you can access it here. You know, what we found in terms of an effective way to do this is to give people a little bit of time, you know, to kind of give people a little presentation like, okay, here's the Parks and Recreation budget. We've got, you know, kind of 2 or 3 things we're really, you know, thinking about here and we'd like some public input on. Go ahead and give your input on that, and then when people do, then you can have a little bit of discussion on that. And then, you know, we'd encourage you just to use that facilitator screen at the end to you know, provide that opportunity for discussion, which we found to be really useful. This is a slide that we have. You can also have this slide if you want. It's just one of those animated slides that just kind of reinforces the idea that you have to hit submit category and you have to get the green check mark. I think that's my last slide. Okay, I've said that it refreshes every 30 seconds. Create a new meeting for every gathering you have. We've had a couple of cities that have tried kind of combining them, but I don't think it really makes sense, because I think what people like is they like to see what the people who live in that meeting have done. So you can create a new meeting that is unlimited. And then just because you have meeting mode, it doesn't mean that you have to use it all the time. By far, I mean, by thousands and thousands of people in city governments and county governments and school districts have participated using just the online version. That may work. Actually, one of those city councils I was just mentioning, they're not even going to use meeting mode. They're just going to use kind of the live version and just treat it as an educational tool. So, once again, in this tough time where we don't know exactly what the right answer is, but we just wanted to make this meeting mode available to you for these real-time synchronous get-togethers. And if it's useful for you, that's great. If not, the online version that doesn't have the meeting mode features, that's been tried and proven with hundreds of thousands of users and clean interface and so forth. And we think that especially when you've got these really tough decisions coming up with projected revenue shortfalls, we think having both staff internally understand what the trade-offs are and having a chance to provide some input, even if they're not the decision makers, as well as those residents really understanding what you're up against. It's going to make I'm not going to say your life easier, but at least it's going to give a sense that you're kind of in this together and that you're sort of understanding the problem and coming up with realistic solutions together. And that's it.
So has anybody created a simulation yet in this group that wants to say anything? Anybody created one? Not yet. Okay, so Tyler said to everyone, not yet. Do you think you're going to use this internally or externally as you go forward? What are you thinking about? Since Tyler, since you said not yet, are you thinking about it externally or internally?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Hi, this is Tyler. Yeah, and first internally, and then maybe share with the council, and then if it all works well, use it for external reporting as well.
Anybody else?
Yep.
Thoughts?
Brenda, if I can just, I hope that others have some thoughts, but I'm just going to piggyback for just a moment. We did a webinar with a GFOA about 2 weeks ago. It had 930 people attending. It was really something. And it's actually available for free for you all to watch if you want. But they did one of those flash polls of the finance officers and the budget officers that were on, and they asked, what's giving you more heartburn as you look to the future of these declining revenues? Is it dealing internally with working through these budget cuts, or is it dealing with the public? And we were sort of surprised to find out that by a 3-to-1 margin, 460 people to about 130 who answered the poll said internal. And so we're actually just in the middle of making some new software features to help use it internally a little bit more. So I didn't mean to, if anybody else was going to comment on how they're going to use it, I just wanted to let you know that at least from this sample, we know that a lot of you are really worried about trying to work through these tough decisions internally, and then I think maybe working through with the public might come next.
Yeah, Craig or Sheila, any thoughts about how you're thinking about using it? It's okay if you don't have any thoughts either.
Hi, this is
Hey, Sheila?
sorry. I kept muting and unmuting myself. Celia's the one that is in charge of that piece of this, so I can't really respond to that. I'm putting it together for her. And then I believe it's internal originally, but she may have bigger plans than I know about.
Great. Great. Yeah. Charlie, do you have any thoughts about using this internally when you're using it for, staff and city council? Charlie, are you there?
Unmute.
Yeah, I can think of several. First of all, the first review is a finance department review, and if an agency is large enough, the department head could be reviewing this proposal with the finance department and have his or her division managers in attendance as well. And those division managers, well, they're competing for the department slice of the pie just as much as the department is fighting for their piece of the pie citywide. So as supplemental program requests are being made or proposed cuts under the COVID-19 environment are being proposed, you could start to build consensus amongst the division heads or when you get to the city manager view amongst the department heads on which programs have a higher priority than others. You know, you could almost have a voting sequence till you get to the targeted cutback or to the targeted resource allocation, where you're building consensus through a series of votes, what has priority, what's ridden to the top, until finally everyone agrees that this is the final budget that's going to be presented to the city manager, or the final budget that's going to be presented to the city council.
Great. Would you recommend when you do it internally to put every line item in from your budget, or would you,
I think, of course, putting every line item is interesting, but usually cities make decisions in decision blocks or decision packages. And so I would recommend, using the system in a way that you have the category maybe being parks, and then the subcategories being decision packages. One being a base budget, and then the other being base budget plus a new recreation program, or a competing recreation program, or adding a new park and having to maintain that park, and then increasing or decreasing those amounts accordingly.
Howard, any questions? Anybody else? Vicky? Sheila?
Tyler has something, I think.
Oh yeah, he did. Tyler said Brawley's ERP is from Tyler Tech Fund Balance. He wants to know if anyone's experienced using Fund Balance with Balancing Act. Good question, Tyler. I defer to Chris or to Charlie.
So we don't have any particular specific experience with Tyler Tech Fund Balance, but the key really is, as Charlie illustrated earlier, is just getting some input from your budgeting software so that you can put it in those three very simple categories that comprise the balancing act simulation: your category, your subcategory, your amount, and almost certainly your biggest task is going to be rolling things up and combining things. So, really just being realistic, if you have more than about 30 lines, 30 items on Balancing Act, it's going to be more than the public can really take in and manage, and you probably don't want feedback on everything anyway. So you really process of rolling up. But so Charlie had a really nice process with the output from Springbrook that he sort of rolled up, but it was basically an Excel task that did it, right, Charlie?
That's correct. Yeah, there's Excel, and a follow-up question for Tyler would be: are you doing your budgeting in Tyler, or are you doing your budgeting in Excel spreadsheets? I would expect probably doing it in Excel spreadsheets.
Yes, that is correct. Very manual process, all using Excel exclusively for the budget.
Yeah. So, Balancing Act has a partnership with Questica, which is a remote-based cloud software that does all that, takes it out of the Excel and brings it into the cloud for you. That might be something you want to explore. And those two systems work really well together, as Chris could talk about.
Yeah. Go ahead, Charlie, please.
Yeah, but Tyler, I haven't gone online and looked at your budget document, but if you have like a spreadsheet that rolls up by your general fund, your department division, and objects, I could help create that pivot table for you to import into Balancing Act. Okay,
I appreciate that. May take you up on it.
Okay.
We'll be sending Charlie's spreadsheets around so that you can take a look at how he did it. But yeah, Charlie just exported that into Excel. Does anybody else has a question about what kind of budget software they use, or does everybody use Excel? Is on this call? Who wants to say anything? Greg, are you still there?
You know, for balance, it's really, Excel is a pretty handy tool to sort of, you know, roll up your items and get your three required pieces of input. So it's really not too bad at all. It's pretty easy as well if you don't, but it's really not that hard either way.
Greg says he uses it as well. Sheila, is that you?
Yountville uses a combination of Springbrook and Excel to do their budget documents.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They probably using the extended budget function of Springbrook, right?
That's correct, yes. And then we create the document in Excel.
But in either event, once you load your budget into Springbrook, and if you're using extended budgeting, you probably have the draft up there. We just extract it from Springbrook and then we can go from there. And like I mentioned, Celia, it's the query manager. The query is pretty easy to write. It takes maybe 1 minute of me telling you where to click. The export takes you know, a couple minutes to run, and then we create a pivot table and we're ready to go. It shouldn't take us longer than 15 minutes.
Okay, great.
And Craig says they also use Excel, so that seems to, it will work easily. I'll send you our templates even in advance, and even before, if you want to look at import into those Excel into those templates, the CSV templates before. I'll send you that along with this deck. Any questions?
Well, I've got a question for people. This is a new format where we're using Zoom instead of GoToWebinar, and I sort of like it because it does lend itself to conversation a little bit better. So I just love to ask you all, you know, now that you've got, you know, at least your feet, maybe your ankles, maybe up to your knees wet in terms of building a simulation, what's the next thing you need, or what's the next challenge you need to get to that next step? Because one thing about building simulations is it can really be, you know, you can make them very elaborate, you can make them very simple, and I think they can be effective either way. So I'd actually just be really curious to all of you who are sort of new to this and hopefully have an account established, what's the next step that you need to take in order to keep building your simulation?
This is Tyler. I just need to get in there and start whacking away at it, and then I'll know what I don't know. Okay?
You're a man after my own heart, Tyler.
That's right. All right. Well, while you're whacking, and Sheila said the same here. She agrees with me. So while you're whacking away, if you have questions while whacking away and getting in there, and you get to a point where you have a question or you need some help, that's why we wanted our whole team to be on today. Obviously, Charlie has knowledge that rest of us may not have or don't have. So if you're asking about pivot tables, that would be him. But if you're asking about public engagement, other ways to use it, ways to phrase it, strategy, any kinds of examples, Peter and Chris and I can definitely help you. And we've been doing this a while. I think we didn't really tell you, but we've been doing this for a few years now. We started, you know, because we used to do these budget meetings, and we really needed a tool that allowed us to involve more people than the 3 or 4 that would come to the budget meeting. And so that's one of the things. One of the things I did want to mention for those of you in California, like Colorado, everybody needs to vote on taxes. So if use that I function if you are gonna allow them to rate, you know, they can raise taxes. You might use that I function to say, remember, you need to vote on taxes. You can't raise taxes without a vote of the people. So that would be something that you could put for all of your taxes, for all the information icons for taxes would be to remind people that they just, you know, that local governments can't do it by themselves. And Yeah, so if you have questions like that, strategy, what to put, what others have done, we're happy to help you. Anything else, Peter, Charlie, Chris?
Yeah, just thanks for joining us. And as Brenda said, you know, we're happy to help, happy to advise you. There's a lot of versatility to the tool, especially with what's going on right now. And everybody's kind of learning on their feet, it seems like. So we are definitely happy to advise you as well in any capacity.
These are scary times and we're all in it together, and Balancing Act is here. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all. It's nice to get a chance to interact with you and let us know how we can help.
Yeah, keep in
Yeah,
touch.
thanks
Thanks so much.
for joining
All
us.
right.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.